Come on, you lot, go on then. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Okay, go on, fellas. Get around the piano. Let's have a good go. Come on, then. Are you ready? Come on, you lot, go on then. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay. Oh, 'tis our delight for the red and white. The imps are here to stay.
Morning all, I hope you're all well. Thought I would do a quick dog walk video this morning. It's been a while. This will be the first one to go on TalkSport, so you could be listening to this on the TalkSport network. The wind is down here, but so the sound quality shouldn't be too bad. So just to let you know, if you are new to this and you are listening on TalkSport, the morning dog walk is where in the morning I walk the dog, but I talk about Lincoln City to alleviate boredom, perhaps. We just do a little bit of a chat. We get a few people on board, 24 at the moment. Good morning to you all. Morning, Ryan Whelan, Connor Pearce and Kev Green. Hope you're all well. And we just chat Lincoln City. So it could be the first time you're listening on TalkSport. If it is, thank you very much. So then a little bit more background. Today is, I have been told, Blue Monday. Blue Monday. So it's the day where the payday seems a long way in the distance. Christmas is a long way in the past. And we're stuck in this kind of nothingness. Mid-January, cold weather, really cold up here. My hands are freezing holding the phone, a little bit windy. Nobody's really got any money. Nobody's got any plans until the end of the month. Oh, woe is me. Blue Monday. For Lincoln fans, it's even worse, isn't it? Shots on target at a premium. Just not threatening really on Saturday. Lots of negativity. And do you know what? I took a little bit of stick on Twitter because the same old people come out of the woodwork, don't they? And I'm not, look, people are entitled to their opinion, but some people's opinion doesn't change from one year to the next. Everything's got to be negative. I was negative. I felt negative since the Accrington defeat, probably. Charlton, I was frustrated, not negative. I mean, we created a little bit against Charlton, probably deserved or could have drawn the game. Just looked a bit ragged in the midfield. Accrington, we should have beat. We should have had a semi-final to look forward to. We don't. And this weekend, that was a game for the taking. So it's easy to get caught up in all of that. And sometimes if you're a social media junkie, unfortunately, which I am, and I'd love not to be, but if you are a social media junkie, it's really easy as well to get caught up in what everybody else is saying. Hyperbole, like awful, woeful, terrible, not good enough. Manager must go. Always somebody got to be to blame as well, hasn't there? Poor old Jez George is one that gets a lot of the blame, isn't he? Recruitment's not been good enough, I hear. No one was saying that when Jack Diamond got Player of the Month, when Lewis Fiorini and Brooke Norton-Cuffy came in. So it's easy. Everybody looks for a scapegoat. That's football. That's the social media world, isn't it? And it brings us back to Blue Monday, where we're all angry. We're all looking for somebody to blame about Lincoln City's current predicament. But let's hold up. Let's rewind. What is Lincoln City's current predicament? Well, we're in League One. We haven't won since the 19th of November in the league. My birthday, great day. We haven't won away in the league since I think we beat Ipswich or Barnsley, whichever came first in October. Predicament. We're 6 points away from the relegation zone at present. If we averaged a single point a game from now to the end of the season, we'd get 51 points. Only one team in the last 20 years has been relegated on 51 points, and that team had a horrific goal difference, far worse than our goal difference is now. So if we drew every game from now to the end of the season, bar something completely and utterly out of the ordinary, we'd stay up anyway. So it's interesting. What is our predicament? We drew with Bolton and Ipswich over Christmas. We're resilient. We're not conceding goals. Okay, we conceded 4 last week, 4 in 3 games now. Under usual circumstances, we're not conceding goals. We're halfway through a transfer window, so we're almost. It's almost like we're writing off a television series when you're only at episode 3 and there's still 3 episodes left to go. So whilst it's easy to be negative, and it's a very British thing, I think it's a very British thing to always look on the dark side of life, isn't it? I remember people walking out against Colchester when we lost 3-0 on the final game of a season where we'd already won the title with 3 games to spare because the football wasn't good enough. So the criticism is really, it's easy. It's so easy to be negative. You know, you go to a party, you know the people who you're going to go and talk to. If you say you're okay, they're going to start telling you why they're not. Because, you know, we don't like positivity in England, in Britain. We don't like winners. I remember growing up at school, a school assembly somebody did on Prince Nazim Ahmed saying, why do we hate Prince Naz? Because a lot of people did at the time because he was arrogant and he's a winner. But we like negativity. We like the plucky underdog. That's why people now go back to Danny and Nicky all the time, isn't it? Bring back the brothers. Why? Because we were the plucky underdog. We weren't the big winners. Nobody expected us to win. We weren't the big boys in the division. So we weren't that kind of behemoth. We were just plucky. At the time, some of those people would probably have been saying that the football wasn't good enough, or Danny had taken us as far as he could, or we were spending too much money. Easy to be critical. Easy to look back on the past with a certain fondness. I look back now on the Michael Appleton reign, and I remember the good bits, not particularly the negative bits. So I wanted to look at some reasons why, despite it being Blue Monday, 18th, something like that of January, I lose count, there are reasons not to be so despondent around Lincoln City at the moment. And I'm not saying we're not going to get dragged into a relegation battle. I'm not saying it's going to be a challenge between now and the end of the season. I'm really not. I'll come to it in a minute. I just wanted to pick up on a couple of points already, if that's okay with everybody. I usually go back to the beginning on these dog walks and then I start going over the same points again. Jonathan Ricketts, thank you for watching, my friend. Are our fans any worse than others? Whenever we don't win, not lose a few games in a row, it's panic station, sack the manager and Jess George. No, they're not, actually. They're not. You're quite right. Football fans in the modern day are almost always the same. You know, it doesn't matter if you're Lincoln, if you're Portsmouth, it's always don't win a couple of games, sack the manager. Not challenging for the playoffs, something's to blame. There's always fundamental problems at a football club. And I think it's a football thing. And it's probably more because we have access to social media, because we have access to every game, every interview. It's so easy. Back in the 60s and 70s, I seem to remember, I don't remember it because I'm not there, but you know, it was in the pubs when you go to the pubs and you'd listen to the guy at the bar moaning, but the only people who listened to him were the ones around him. And if they didn't want to listen to him, they'd move away. Social media, we get everybody's opinion. And then when you choose to filter that opinion, as I do, and mute a whole lot of people who I have time for and I respect, but their opinions are of no consequence to me, I then get a little bit of criticism for that. It's my filter. It's my walking away from the bar. So what's Shane got to say? Shane Clark, morning, pal. Same old people after every defeat or poor run. Sometimes you just need to have a weekend off and keep away from social media. It squeezes the life out of you. You are quite right. I am a social media junkie. I do tend to go on it. I go on it far, far less than I did last season. It got to me last season to a point where I fell out with quite a few people. And they're expressing their opinion, as is their right. Their opinion was wrong, in my opinion. And then I felt I had to argue it. And I don't know. I look at Lincoln City like a family member. See, honest truth, I look at Lincoln City like they're I would say my brother, but at the moment probably best not. So I look at Lincoln City like they're my mum or my dad. You know, that you criticize your own mum and dad. You will. If your mum does something wrong, like she doesn't call you when she's going to, oh, mum didn't call again. Someone says, oh, your mum's a dick for not calling, you're straight on their case. That's my mum. What are you talking about? And I feel the same about Lincoln City. If we haven't played well and I say we haven't played well, I can handle that. If I say we haven't played well, and even I can say something and then people will agree with it, and I'll go, well, that's a little bit harsh. And then I'll start doing the counter argument. It's bizarre. And that's what social media does. So you're quite right. Kate, morning, Gary. Hope you're well. The result of the weekend didn't surprise me. We have a history of losing to teams in the relegation zone, regardless of how we're doing at the time. 100% spot on. Yes, we do. Connor Pierce, morning, Connor. I've avoided calling people entitled, but keen to get your view, as we're in a decent spot contextually. We know we can perform and survive in League One. This is what we've taken. This is what we would have taken for the season. Why does it change after a few poor results? I'll come back to that in a minute. And Kev Sewell. Now, I've got a pity, Kev. I sit in front of Gav, good guy. Sit right in front of him at the football. Easy to take money off in a bet because his football knowledge. I'm sure he can play the game a lot better than me, but Danny and Nicky aren't coming back. Kev says, it's all right for me, Blue Monday. It's all right for you, Gary, Blue Monday. I'm with a total clown. I've just had to buy his breakfast. So Gav's just got a free breakfast on Kev. That's great news. So let's go back to Connor. Avoided calling people entitled. Be keen to get your view as we're in a decent spot contextually. I can see the angle. I'm gonna stop short of calling some Lincoln City fans entitled because I think it's a football thing as a whole. I think in this day and age where there's so much media, there's so much expectation, there's so many interviews, everybody's got to give an opinion, and you'll pick the opinions you want. So it's like England. England go to the World Cup and it's, well, we should be doing this, we should be doing that. And then when we don't, it feels like the fans have been entitled, but I'm not sure it is always the case. I think it's just a expectation is raised now. There's far more analysis of Lincoln City than there ever used to be. Far more. I mean, nobody used to walk around the Wolds on a Monday morning pointing a phone talking about Lincoln, taking questions. Lincoln City didn't have dedicated websites back in the 80s, for instance. It was just a newspaper and it was just pub chatter. And therefore, it was easy for pockets of expectation to grow, but not large scale expectation, if that makes sense. And I think in the modern age, with so much media and so much focus and so much analysis, everybody expects something. I think if you ask any football fan before the season starts where they think their team will finish, they will always say that their team will finish outside the bottom four. Very few will say that they get relegated. And I think it's expectation more than anything. And I also think, when you're traveling away to a lot of games, you hope to be entertained. And it's easy to have a knee-jerk reaction when you're not entertained and say, we're rubbish, we're this, we're that. I get it. I've done it. Shrewsbury last season. Coming away from Shrewsbury last season, I'd invested the day, money. It was awful football. Worst away game I've been to in a long, long while. And you have that initial anger. And probably 20 years ago, that initial anger was shared by the people in the car, on the bus. And then you would get back and you'd look at things a little bit more analytically the next day. And you'd probably go, well, actually, it wasn't as bad as that. Or, this was good, or that was good. Or you just didn't put it straight out there immediately. A lot of the hyperbole happens half an hour after the game finishes, rather than Sunday morning or something like that. It takes a special type of moaner to sleep on it, come on and go, use emojis in a tweet to say it was still dog shit. There's a little pause there. That's for Andy Pearson. I love you really, man. So I don't think it's entitlement. I'm going to stop short of calling our fans entitled. Every fan base has entitled fans. I don't think Lincoln City does as such. I can understand where the notion comes from, but it's not for me. It's not for me. So why are we to be happy? Well, Owen Dawson has commented, morning Gaz, I'm a glass half full type of guy, not overly worried yet. There's easily more than 4 teams worse than there's this season, MK being one of them. 1 or 2 quality additions, along with a few returning from injury, and things will look brighter. And Luke Kempson, I think this is our level at the moment. We all want to be better, but it's not a bad place to be. Now, I don't live in the past, but if 6 years ago you'd said to me, your level will be mid-table League One, I'd have taken that. If somebody had said your level will be bottom half League One, I would have taken that. And let's not forget, if we were in this position in League Two, which we probably were for a large portion of my time as a fan, you're in no danger because there's only 2 relegation spots. There only needs to be 2 teams worse. It's easy to get sucked into this division. It's easy to drop out of this division. I think it's the only division in the English game with 4 relegation spaces. I mean, it is a dangerous division. And when you think about the size of the teams that are in the division, at the top end, Ipswich now outside the top 2, Portsmouth tumbling down the table, Charlton only just went above us last season. Big teams. Bolton, been to Sinsel-Bank, didn't get a win. Sheffield Wednesday, been to Sinsel-Bank, didn't get a win. Barnsley, Premier League in my lifetime, we've been there, we've beaten them twice at Oakwell this season. Sorry, Kate Jack said the National League has 4 relegation spots as well. Sorry, I meant, top flight leagues or top professional divisions. But it's a dangerous league. There's vipers at the top and there's a trapdoor at the bottom. It's easy to walk over. So I think you've got to take that into account and go, well, we're in the middle of January. We're on a bad run. We're still 6 points off the drop at the moment. I don't think it's a terrible place to be. I'd rather have our fate in our own hands at this stage than already have it kind of out of your hands. That if you're in the bottom 4 already, I suppose nobody's got the fate out of their hands now, but you know what I mean? If you're 6 points out of the relegation spot, the onus is on teams to catch you. And all you've got to do is keep amassing those points to stay out of it. And I think I said 5 or 7 points from the next 3 games. Well, we've got 1 of those. And I know that if we draw one of these next home games and then win, the critics will be out. But actually, if we've taken 5 points from 3 games, if you take 5 points from every 3 games between now and the end of the season, you comfortably stay up. Anyone expecting us to win the next 2 home games is really stretching, because we've won 2 home games all season. And I can't see us going into these 2 home games that are comparable with Fleetwood, Exeter, Forest Green, Accrington. I can't see us going in and winning those games. I can't see us losing these games. I can see it being a 4 points. Take 4 points from the next 3. I'll actually be a hell of a lot happier, because we will have put another 2 points between us and a relegation rival, and we will have kept another relegation rival from gaining on us. So what else have we got to be positive about? Well, look, I keep hearing how bad the squad is, how bad recruitment's been, how desperately short we've been left. I don't agree. I do agree we're short in key areas. And as Steve Freeston's come on, morning Steve, I worry about the lack of creativity in midfield. We could have the best striker in League One on the pitch, but if he's not being fed by midfield wingers, he'll not have a chance. He's hoping we can find that elusive midfielder before the end of the window. Do you know what? It's actually not creativity in midfield that worries me. It's the fight and control in midfield that worries me. It's the Matty Virtue, the Liam Bridcut, almost the Conor McGrandles. Now I'll go way back to Scott Kerr, the John Finnegans, people like that. It's that midfielder that provides the anchor between the top of the pitch and the bottom of the pitch. It's the midfielder that allows players like Max Sanders, who was woeful on Saturday. There I go, hyperbole. But it's players who allow Max Sanders to do what he does best in the fight in the top half of the pitch. I don't know if the wind's bad, by the way. If it is, my apologies. It's that type of midfielder. It's the midfielder that's going to provide that link. And it's the midfielder that, when you're playing 4 at the back, is vital, offering the additional protection. We went back to 4 at the back, and that works by playing 2 holding midfielders, which we did in Sanders and Sorensen. But then you've got Mandrew, who's almost playing as an additional striker. So it's then that you lack the creativity. And you're quite right that, you know, it's then that if you're still going to play 2 in midfield, then you need a more creative midfielder. Ted Bishop, unfortunately, this season has not come back as the same player. Tom Hopper, we know, hasn't as well. And you're going to have a striker the ball sticks to, and it didn't stick to Tom. But consider this, when Ben House comes back, I think he's the best striker on our books at the moment. 7 goals from open play, which I think makes him our leading scorer from open play. And when I say open play, I mean penalties only. I don't mean kind of like free kicks or goals from set pieces and things like that. I mean, you know, non-penalty goals. So I think he's a different type of striker. His runs are a little bit better, I think, than Tom's. Tom is a defensive striker, a battling striker. I think he's a striker who's entering the last few months of his contract and the last few months of his time in the City, if I'm honest. For me, we still need another striker. And I'm not here saying we need to buy 20 goals a season, man. But we do need another striker, one who's willing perhaps to come and fight and look for the ball a little bit. And, you know, you can have as many strikers in the world and still not score goals. Look at MK Dons on Saturday, Will Grigg, Mo Isa. They've just signed John Lecco, got Louis Barry there. They've got good attacking players. They're still not scoring. So it's not about saying our striker's not good enough, as I suppose Steve alludes to. It's about chance creation. I don't think we've had a serious problem with chance creation when we've had Matty Virtue in the team. Because I think when you've got Virtue in the team, there was just a little bit more balance in midfield. There was a game, I think it was Plymouth, where we had this perfect synergy between fullbacks, wingers, and midfielders. And to get farther up the pitch, those 3 have got to work together on the side of the pitch. So be it, you know, Jack Diamond, Regan Poole, and whoever the central midfielder is. At the moment, Sorensen and Sanders. I'm not convinced Sorensen and Sanders are those type of midfielders. But if you get 1 or 2 players, you're then in a position to go, well, actually now we're in a good place. I think 2 players, and I got laughed at this, laughed out of a conversation. I think we're only 2 signings this window away from achieving the comfortable mid-table finish that we want. Look, my stag weekend is last weekend of April. Last home game, away game, away at Morecambe. We're going to Morecambe minibus and onto the Lake District. I want to be safe by then. That's the aim, in my eyes. We're 2 signings away from that. We are an attacker, not to replace Ben House, but to come on when we need to go 2 up top, to come on for the last 20 minutes when we need a different approach, but one I think who's more effective than Tom. Look, I'm not piling on Tom. I love Tom. He's a great guy off the field. He's fantastic personality. He's been good to me. He was great to my nephew when he came to his first game as well. But at the moment, he's not offering what I think we need a player to offer in that number 9 role when Ben House isn't fit. We need an alternative. And a midfielder, a central midfielder. If I'm being greedy, another winger might be nice. But remember, these have now all got to be permanent signings unless Tashan goes back, which actually I don't think would be. I don't think is beyond the realms of possibility. Tashan's obviously not really had a huge impact either. Matthew Walker says it's not the points total that worries me, it's the style of football. But again, is that related to the players that we have available? My mate Pete messaged me on Sunday morning, I think it was, and said selling Jamie Robson and then going to a back 4 shows a complete lack of planning on Lincoln City's part. So his theory was Jamie Robson's a left back rather than a wing back. He would have been perfect to have played left back. We've now gone forward at the back and signed a wing back in Harry Boyes, and that shows poor planning. I kind of disagree, because first of all, I actually think Jamie Robson was just as much of a wing back. He's got forward and put the cross in for Jordan Garrick's goal on Saturday. So if we're talking about creative attacking moments from a defender, Jamie Robson did that for Forest Green on his debut. I don't know why we sold Jamie Robson. Personally, it's a decision that baffles me a little bit. I think there's got to be more to it. Maybe it's wages, maybe it's personality with Mark Kennedy. I don't know. Those things happen. They happen across football. It's one of those things. I liked Jamie Robson. I don't think it shows particularly a lack of planning. I think that we have a squad where we can be flexible. Okay, so I'm not a massive fan of changing formations. So I'm not a massive fan of going 3-4-3 for this period, 4-2-3-1 for this period, 4-3-3. Do you know what I mean? Because I think a team needs its own identity to beat the teams in and around it. It's easy then to adapt, and I think we adapt well to the big challenges. We proved that beating Bristol City, playing well against Southampton, winning at Ipswich, drawing at home with Ipswich, Bolton. We can stifle, and we can kind of gain an advantage that way. But you've got to have your own identity then to be able to go and beat teams. And that's what we haven't got. That's what I said, I think, after October or November, when we'd had a really good run. This is a top half team if we can figure out a way to do that. We haven't figured out a way to do that. Therein lies the problem. And I know we're talking about injuries coming back, and I think, I can't think who said it, somebody said it a little bit further up here on the chat. We haven't actually got that many players to come back. Ben House, Sean Rowan, Lewis Monsma. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's about it. Lewis, where's he going to play? You've got Adam Jackson, you've got Joe Walsh, you've got, if we go 4 at the back, the centre back's got to move on. Surely got to move on. But do you then want to keep the extra defender in case you want to go back to 3 at the back? That's the issue. That's the issue with not having particularly a set way to play. Ben House comes back, he plays. Sean Rowan comes back, you go forward at the back. Rowan's more a defensive fullback. And there is a clear definition between Harry Boyes, a clear kind of play style between Harry Boyes, between Sean Rowan. God, the wind's getting up again. My apologies if it's affecting the sound. But the fact is that we're still talking about decent players. And when people say to me, 80% of the squad's not good enough for League One, it's hyperbole. It is. Because you can't tell me that any of the back 4 or 5 are not League One quality, because they've proven they are. They've proven they are in every game this season, that they've needed to defend and fight and dig out results. Howdy O'Connor signing in the summer. Adam Jackson, definitely League One quality. We've seen it over the last couple of years. Joe Walsh, even coming back from his injury, is the same. TJ's had decent games on the right 3. Regan Poole, good enough. Harry Boyes, jury's still got to be out. But an MK Dons fan messaged me on Saturday and said Harry Boyes is hell of a player. And he was impressed with him on Saturday. Sean Rowan is not a player that you're going to go, well, he's not good enough for this. You go across the back, it's hard to pick a single player that you wouldn't say isn't good enough for this level. It's the midfield, the central midfield. Max Sanders is, when he's got Matty Virtue or AN other next to him. Lars Sorensen is in a 3 when his job is run after everything, and you don't have to worry about being too technical. I don't think that he's impressed in terms of technicality. And I can't remember again who it was I was conversing with. My apologies if it was you, who said Lass is exactly the opposite that you would expect from a foreign player or a European player coming from a former Premier League team. You would expect him to drop down to this division, and or any player of that kind of ilk to drop down to this division and be technically very good, but perhaps lack some of the work rate, some of the competentness. Whereas actually what you've got with Lass is his work rate's good, he scraps hard, he fights for everything, but he lacks a little bit of finesse. Exactly the opposite from what you'd expect. You could argue those two as a twos, not League One quality. I'd argue that all day long. I don't think they are. I think that was partly why my mark changed it this Saturday. Danny Mandrew, still settling in, but I think you can see the quality he's got. Jack Diamond, hit and miss, inconsistent, but League One quality, not Championship quality. Midi Stipo, no idea. Can't judge him on one game against MK Dons. Absolutely can't. Tom Hopper, lower League One quality at best at this stage of his career. I think the injuries and the timeouts taking its toll. Ben House, certainly getting there. Charles Vernham, borderline. But it's not actually that many that you would go borderline. And when I say borderline for Charles Vernham, I think he's a good player to have to bring off the bench. Just worry about his end product. He can carry the ball for you, and I think he's changed games when he's came on and made us look a better team going forward. But you need players who have got that spark. And we look at Raksaki, for instance, at Charlton. Players who are going to deliver a pass. Players like, and here we go again, Brennan Johnson, Morgan Rogers, Brucknell and Coffey. Players that will get you off your seat and you think they're going to do something here. Remember his run in that game against Wickham, where he went like the whole, just cut through the whole pitch, beating players, had a shot, didn't go in. But that type of run, that type of player, that's what we lack. And we're not going to sign one now, in my opinion, because that type of player, is the wind okay? Hit me up in the comments if the wind's bad, because it's blowing a gale again. But we're not going to sign that type of player because you get that type of player on loan. You don't pay money for them, and we're now looking to pay money for players. So in terms of thrills and spills out wide, I think that's your lot. Might be wrong, but I think it is. I think what we're looking at now is paying a fee for a player who can come in and we will either develop, but we'll add strength. Now, I'm not going to name the name, but there was a report yesterday on Nottingham Live, Notts Live, I think it was, about Lincoln City putting a bid in for a player, and it was immediately taken down. Now, if that's the case, we're currently looking to try and buy strikers. That's what we need to do. And, it's easy to criticise Jez because nobody really understands what he does. It's easy to criticise recruitment when you're losing games. I don't see a lot of praise when you're winning games. I don't see a lot of people going, well done to the recruitment team for bringing Powdy O'Connor into Sincilbank when Sheffield Wednesday were interested in the summer. I don't see a lot of that. Funny, isn't it? I see a lot of criticism of why haven't we sold Regan Poole when I didn't see a lot of praise when we signed Regan Poole. Well, you don't see a lot of retrospective praise for the players that we signed. It's so easy. I don't think our recruitment has been awful. I don't think it's been great at times. But what's great? Brennan Johnson and Morgan Rogers. That whole summer where financial fair play went out the window. That was great recruitment, but it was a one-off. Now, with retrospect, last summer's recruitment wasn't great. It wasn't. Luis Fiorini did relatively well. Maguire was a flop. Adelakun was a flop. It's hard to even think anyone else. Sorensen, jury's out. I don't think he's the player that we'd hoped he might be. So, sorry, the wind is just, I can't believe it's got up like this. I wouldn't have done a thing if it was going to be so inaudible. So I want to try and put this on TalkSport. So anyway. So there we go. I still think there's plenty to be positive about. 6 points clear. Our fate's in our own hands. I think that we look hard to beat when we play at our full capacity. I think that changing formation on Saturday and still not looking susceptible, despite them having quality attackers. I mean, Louis Barry was on the books of Barcelona. Mo Isa was a 1 million striker. I just think, I actually think now, with retrospect, it was boring on Saturday. But was it woeful? Was it terrible? I'm not so sure it was. I think it's easy to get drawn into that way, especially when you've travelled in good numbers, which we did. And respect to everybody that travelled, I think it's easy to get drawn into, we were terrible, it was boring, blah, blah, blah. It's where we are. We're not going to go out and beat teams 3 or 4-0 because that's not what we do. That's not the level that we're at now, is it? There's not many. And Shrewsbury will beat Burton 3-0. It would be nice for us to go and beat one of these two teams we've got coming up in the next kind of 2 weeks, 3 or 4-0. And just get our fans kind of a little bit back on side, and get some of those wavering fans to realise that it isn't all doom and gloom. It's not ideal. But I've seen words sleepwalking into a relegation battle now, 3 seasons out of the last 4. 2 out of those 3 seasons, we didn't walk into that relegation battle. I heard sleepwalking into a relegation battle in February last year. We never dropped into the bottom 4 after February last year. And I just think it's easy then to get drawn into it, because then a moderate supporter, and Gordon Gardner's got the point here, does social media skew what the majority of supporters think and understand? It does, because then your moderate supporter goes on and sees people talking about relegation, and that's the conversation, that's the discussion. That's what steers debate on my dog walks. It's what steers topics on BBC Radio Lincolnshire. And actually, with 6 points off the bottom 3, or the bottom 4 rather, we've been closer to it at other points this season. So the form's not great. It isn't. But actually, the 2 results, the 2 games we should have lost, we didn't. And that's what's bizarre. And I think that's what's also the reason that it shouldn't be Blue Monday today. Not massively. It shouldn't be all about worry and stress. Just take each game as it comes. And if in 2 weeks' time we're closer to the bottom than we are now, because we've drawn 2 games against, I think it's Burton and Cambridge, isn't it? 2 home games that we should have been getting points on, then I think maybe people will look at it a little differently. If in 2 weeks and 2 days' time we haven't signed a midfielder, and we're going to go through February and March with Sorensen and Sanders as a 2, there'll be a little bit more concern. If we haven't signed a striker and Ben House is still in and out the side, there'll be a little bit more concern. But that ain't going to be the case. We are going to sign players. And when people say, well, half the window's gone, where are the signings? Very few teams make all of their signings early doors. The ones that do have perhaps got the money to outpay or outbid. They're shopping in the markets that we shouldn't be shopping in. And that was one point I made to on an article this week, was when we say we're missing out to teams like Charlton or Ipswich, massive teams, maybe we're going for the wrong players. I don't know the answer, but I don't think that it's all negative. And I think it is, as Gordon says, social media does skew what the majority of supporters understand is happening, and there are a silent majority. And often the people that could slide into my DMs, as the Utes say, on a match day, they only do so when we lose. And you know who you are, Nick Oxbury. There's only worry and panic. It's never we're doing well, we're on a good trajectory, or this was positive or that was positive. It's easy to pick negatives out of a negative performance. It's easy to pick positives out of a positive performance. The real skill is to do it the other way around. Look for the negatives in the positives and look for the positives in the negatives. But you've got to do both. If you just look for negatives and positives, but then never, ever try and focus on positives. If you just go on social media and say, defend that was terrible. There's no balance there. There's no reason there. There's no debate. There's no argument. There's just one-sided opinion. And that's the worst. And that's why I put an article out with concerns on Saturday and then defending it on Sunday, because nothing's black and white. Never. Last season, nothing was black and white. We were good at times, we were bad at times, did things right, we did things wrong. And to get the overall picture, you've got to take that big view. You've got to step back. You've got to look at the positives. Easy to say there aren't any. It's wrong to say there aren't any. Right. So Walters, I think what doesn't help from Saturday is watching a poor MK Don side with no confidence and not taking it to them. They won the last home game. They've got a new manager, so there's a little bit of a bounce there. It's a poor side in terms of performance, but with Grigg and Isa and Louis Barry, it's not poor in terms of the 1 to 11. And we know there's work to do in the transfer window. It's easy again, and this is, I respect Walter's opinion. Obviously, somebody I follow on Twitter, etc. But it is easy to measure yourself against others. I'd rather be us than MK. Buying Jonathan Lecco when they're already saddled with the wages and the fees for Grigg and etc., and loading that squad in a desperate attempt to try and stay up. Even when we overspent this January just gone to stay up, it was on loans and short-term deals. It wasn't saddling the club with a longer debt going forward. It wasn't keep lending me a tenner and I'll keep us up and eventually you're Brassic. And that's what could well happen. MK Dons are a team I would worry about over a 10-15 year period. Financially, I don't worry about us over a 10-15 year period because I think we'll cut our cloth accordingly, and that's a positive. Connor says, should Tashan get a look in the middle? Yes, if we play as a 3. I think he could play as a 10. I think he's a good transitional player. I don't think he's strong enough in the tackle. Potentially, if you can get an overload in that area against a Cambridge or a Burton, he might be the right type of player. But like Burton, for instance, we know what they're going to do. We saw it at their place. They're going to do pretty much the same at our place. Not for me then, Tashan. Who else have we got? Richard, morning, Richard. Might Saturday's performance be a function of the side being risk averse and concentrating on not losing than setting out to win games? It could be. But then that's, I think, what you do away to a degree. We probably went there and thought, well, if we can take a point from that, get Burton and Cambridge, who are equally out of form, back at our place, naturally have a bit of a go at them. Get Shadipo, he got his 45 minutes in. Hopefully we should be better on Saturday. And we have been good at home this season. We're unbeaten at home. It's all right to say, well, I've drawn a lot of games, but some of those games we should have won. And okay, we've shown frailties in those. Fleetwood, defensive frailties, 2-0 up. Should have cleaned that game. Lincoln City go 2-0 up at a game this weekend. We keep it, we win the game. Virtually guarantee that because the defence is now settled and organised and we're much, much stronger. So that's what I hope. Steve Turner, morning, Steve. Sanders is not the same player with Sorensen as he is with Virtue. I think there are half a dozen teams worse than us at the moment. Next 2 games, a massive spot on. And he's not, Max Sanders is not the same player without Virtue. Like Cohen Bramwell wasn't the same player without Joe Walsh. Cohen Bramwell's best performances in Lincolnshire came with Joe Walsh at the side of him. The influence that some players have on other players is massive, and it's also underrated. So, right, I'm going to go because this wind is terrible. I'm hoping it hasn't affected your enjoyment of this morning's dog walk. I'm going to try and get this put up as a podcast, and we'll see how that goes down. Hopefully the sound quality's not been too bad. But thank you everybody for watching. It is Blue Monday, and whatever your personal circumstances are, it could be a tough week now before we get into payday week. But we'll come together on Saturday. Don't forget the Marcus Needham event. Tipsy Imp donating 50p from every single pint to the 617 to create something in Marcus's name, I believe. And there's kind of a pub crawl by the 617, so get yourself involved in that. I shall be down at the ground, making sure the Tipsy Imp are well supported on that endeavour. And look, just let's not try to be too negative. Let's hope there's a sign-in at some point this week. Rest assured, Shadipo will likely start. He'll be settled into the side. There are things to be positive about, and whilst always in football there's positives and negatives, just never be drawn just to focusing on the negatives. Never be drawn. Always be aware to look for them. Always be critical, but just make sure we focus on some of those positives as well. We're still in a decent position to retain our League One status, and everybody would have taken that at the beginning of the season. Enjoy your day. Up the Imps.